Good day, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Chatting with the Lightkeeper. It's hard to believe, but this is my 10th episode, my 10th podcast, so it's kind of exciting, a little bit of a milestone. And so far, I've had fun doing it, and I know that I've grown as I've done this. It's much easier to talk into this big fuzzy microphone sitting here by myself than it was when I first started this journey. So speaking of journeys, something that I think everybody in the lifestyle, especially when you're new, is really excited about is having that experience with lifestyle play. So many people get amped up and, there's, in my mind, a lot of mistakes that happen, especially with people who are newer or new to a relationship, and they kind of jump in a little too soon or maybe a little bit too deep into play. So this week, I'm calling the episode Wanna Play, and we're going to talk a little bit about playtime. If you're a veteran to the lifestyle, some of this may seem old hat. If you're newer, I think there's going to be a lot of good information here. And if you are one of those folks like me who's wearing an old raggedy hat, I hope there will be a few nuggets that you can take away from this discussion today and improve your play. So before any play happens, it's important to actually sit down and have a planning conversation. And a planning conversation just isn't a dominant saying to a submissive, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to you. I know it can be sexy to whisper that into a submissive's ear, or I would imagine if you're a submissive, to have those sorts of things whispered into your ear, knowing what may be coming later in an evening or perhaps daytime. I guess it all depends on how things work in your world. But if you're newer to a relationship, or even if your play is just that, it's play devoid of a relationship, it's just a lifestyle play event for you, it is important to have a plan and to talk it through. The first thing is to get started with is to have a conversation about consent. And everybody involved has to give their consent to whatever is going to happen. The easiest way to look at a conversation about consent is to use the acronym of FRIES. Kind of like going to McDonald's and ordering a large fry. Consent is freely given. There's no coercion involved. It's, yes, I'm on board with it. There can be no coercion, no bullying. Submissive, if you hear something like, well, if you are real submissive, you would do, or I know you did X, Y, and Z with your ex, so I want to do that with you. That's somebody trying to bully you, and don't allow it to happen. That should be a red flag. Immediately walk away. The other part of consent is the R, and that means it's reversible. At any point in time, and it doesn't matter the role, dominant or submissive, they can withdraw their consent and stop play. It's that simple. The most common ways that's done is by the submissive using a safe word. But if it's a newer partner, if you're a dominant, you need to pay attention to things like no, stop, I'm uncomfortable. Even though they're not safe words in the sense it's a new partner, you need to stop, make sure they're okay, and you need to discover if that verbal banter is part of how they play, or if that is perhaps them actually expressing a need to stop. The other part of a conversation about consent is that it has to be informed. Everybody has to understand what things mean. Exactly. There can be no gray areas, and certainly, to be punny here, certainly no 50 shades of gray when it comes to consent. And so you need to be informed of not only what the play involves, but also the risk that it will present to you. Even something as tame and as soft as spanking, if done inappropriately or done wrong, can present risk. So it's important to have an informed discussion. And also, consent has to be enthusiastic, meaning everybody's excited about the project. There's no, yeah, maybe, okay. That's not enthusiastic, and that's a not, they're not, that person is not consenting. And it also, consent has to be specific. You have to specifically ask for consent. Something I've seen over and over in the lifestyle, and often it happens with new submissives, especially new female submissives, is that the specific part kind of gets blurred because the dominant or top is honestly taking advantage. I can't tell you how many times I've heard submissives recall a story about allowing or consenting to a bare-bottomed, bare-handed spanking, where once it starts, the dominant or top might say their hand gets sore, so they pull out an instrument, a flogger or a paddle or maybe even a wooden spoon, possibly take their belt off and go to use that. That is not what was agreed to, and therefore the specific part of the consent is being violated. The other part of consent that goes hand in hand with that bare bottom spanking is many times submissives have talked, once again, they've consented to the bare bottom spanking. However, the dominant or top takes that to mean that not only can they spank the bottom, they can also touch the closely located private parts of the submissive. And that touching is not consented to, and once again we have a violation of consent. So consent has to be specific, and the dominant needs to stay within the boundaries of the consent that they have received. When you're new to a relationship or new to a play partner, oftentimes there are things called soft and hard limits. A soft limit is I'm not really there yet, but maybe over time we'll get there. And the hard limit is, the simple way to think of it is oh hell no, not happening, not doing it. So dominants by nature tend to be pushers. We push for more from our partners. We want to guide and lead our partners to do more, be all they can be. But the thing is, when you're with a partner that's newer to you, or it's strictly a play partner relationship, those soft limits have to be treated as the hard oh hell no limits, because once you start play, yes, the dominant may want to push the submissive, and the play might be going great and the submissive is into it, and so during the play the submissive may be willing to consent to additional things going on beyond what was talked about in the planning stage when we were having that specific discussion on consent. And I'm sorry, but that is not, during play is not the time to negotiate new boundaries. Play can be very intoxicating for both the submissive and the dominant. So consent and your safety really is predicated on staying within the pre-negotiated limits of the play. And I know it's unromantic, especially in a DS partnership, and especially when it's new, to sit down and say, let's play tonight, but before we play, let's have a discussion about limits and consent, and let's get that all ironed out here over dinner, and then we'll go home and we'll play. It sort of takes some of the fun out of it. There's no spontaneity. So my advice on that part of it is have this discussion beforehand, so that everything is set up, so when that natural play percolates and it just seems to spontaneously combust, everything has been, pre-consented. Everything has been pre-agreed to, and we have everything in place for that consent and the play can then just naturally happen rather than having it feel kind of rigid and the everything that pre-planning conversation, the mood spoiler, I guess you could say. There is something else along with consent that I want to touch on briefly. And if you're newer to the lifestyle, I'm sure that you've seen many people who talk about that they have consensual, non-consensual fantasies, meaning the person wants to be forced to do something even though they've given their consent to be forced into this. I hope that makes sense. But the thing about these fantasies where you're acting upon a person who is not consenting to the play is because those fantasies have been discussed beforehand and have been consented to prior. So the submissive has already given their consent, the dominant has given his consent for this play to happen, and at any point during this type of play, a safe word will bring it immediately to a stop. There are some things that I've seen people do that are very unique, to let their partner know that they are open to, for example, on date night, to acting upon one of these non-consensual fantasies that they've already consented to. There's one submissive that I know in the community here who has a specific green dress that she'll wear. And that green dress lets her dominant know that tonight she is open and consenting to their non-consensual fantasies that they've discussed. Same thing with the dominant. I've seen a dominant wear a specific pin in his lapel to be a cue for his submissive to let the submissive know that he's in the mood for this. And so if that pin matches the green dress, they're both consenting to a non-consensual play at some point potentially that evening. So it gives the effect of the fantasy, but yet the consent is still very much a part of that in keeping each other safe. At this point, I'm going to take a brief break because I have a message to share with you from the sponsor of my podcast, and I'll be right back, and we'll continue talking here in just about a minute. Alrighty, and I'm back. Thank you for listening to my little segment from my sponsor. I appreciate it, and I do highly recommend Anchor if you're considering doing your own podcast. Now that we're back and we've talked to the fun part of the planning stages of play, now it's time to actually get into a little bit of the fun side of things. The next part I want to talk about is understanding the toys that you're going to use. This is especially true for dominants, but submissives, you need to understand just how those toys work that the dominant wants to use on you, because you need to know whether the dominant knows what they're doing. Even simple things like, let's say, just the basic paddle. It's nothing fancy, but there are places on a person's body where it is safe to hit with a paddle, and there are places where it is very unsafe to cause an impact with a paddle. So it's important that not only the dominant understands and knows how to use their toys. And dominants, if you're new, YouTube videos or listening to a podcast such as mine is not going to teach you how to use a toy. You really need to invest in going to an in-person workshop where this is actually taught. You have to understand, and submissives have to understand as well, that even the simplest instruments like a paddle, if used wrong, can cause great bodily harm. So it's so important that both dominant and submissive understand the toys, how they're used, and how they're used safely. This is not something that anybody can fake it until they make it with. I mean, one slip of the paddle and hello kidney damage, or hello kidney failure. So you have to really know what you're doing and understand where the play can happen and where the play cannot. So you have to really know your toys. And this next part is really important for submissives, and that is to understand your body. You have to know where you draw the line, how much is too much, how much is too soft, where all of that is. And it's very important to go slowly if you're new, especially towards the how much is too much line, because once you cross that threshold, there's no going back. So if you're new to the lifestyle, my advice, and this would be echoed from many other people, is go slow. Draw a line in the sand that you're very comfortable with, and don't exceed it. The thing about when play happens, and this happens to both dominants and submissives, is that almost like a euphoric feeling can come over you. This is what is called, subspace or dom space. And the best comparison that I could give you, it's almost like a feeling of being drunk. And we know that alcohol leads to not always the best choices. So it's very important to have those limits, have them expressed, and play with a partner that is going to respect your limits, because if you're submissive and subspace comes on, it would be very easy for a dominant who does not have your best interest at heart to take full advantage of that situation. And if you're a dominant and you're with a new partner, or a partner that's new to you, and you start to feel the euphoria of dom space coming on, I'm going to use a sports analogy, yay sports, but call a timeout. Take a moment, stop the play. You can still sensually caress your partner, still touch your partner, but take a break from the play, because as the dominant, you are the one that's in charge. You are leading the play session. And if you are entering a space where your mind is no longer seeing things clearly, as enjoyable as that feeling is, since you're with somebody that is new or new to you, it is time to shut it down, have a break, kind of regain your composure, and then slowly work back into play. So it is very important that both dominants and submissives understand their bodies and how they respond, what that response is. And no matter your role, if you're getting a response from your body that is new or different or feels uncomfortable, it is perfectly okay to call a stop to play and talk about what's going on. The only way play gets really good, in my opinion, between partners is because you engage in some of these not so sexy stop, let's talk about it moments, and then work back into it. It's a learning curve where people have to learn not only the lifestyle, how to play, how to do it safely, but you also have to learn your body as well as how your partner is going to respond. So there has to be a lot of conversations, and sometimes these aren't the sexy conversations to have, but they still need to happen. Now, there's something that I left out when we were talking about the planning stages, and my apologies to this. I should have said that this should have been planned, especially for dominants. Dominants, you have to plan this. This is probably even more important than the actual play itself, and that is aftercare. For me personally, the aftercare, that is the best part of any play, because there's such an intimacy in those times after the play when you're caring for your submissive. So for me, that's the best part. And I know that, I'm not alone in feeling that way. But aftercare needs to be talked about before play happens, because every submissive is going to need different types of aftercare. Different things that might have worked for one submissive may not work well or may not fit with another submissive. Perhaps in the past, if you're a dominant, the submissive liked a long 15-minute long hug, and the submissive now wants nothing to do with a hug that lasts more than 30 seconds. So it's very important to talk about the methods of aftercare, what works, what doesn't work. And there is a difference between aftercare between people who are in the lifestyle that are in a committed relationship. Oftentimes aftercare can last days, if not even a week or even two. There is a real phenomenon called subdrop. It is not something that somebody made up along the way, but it actually happens. So if you are in a relationship and you engage in play with your submissive and they experience subdrop, it's a very real phenomenon that requires the dominant to dedicate oftentimes days, and it may even stretch into a week where there is extra care, extra things needed from the submissive to feel safe, to feel loved and cherished. It's a very emotional time, and it's one that, as a dominant, you need to respect. And that leads to another thought on aftercare, and this is where things kind of get a little hazy sometimes, and that is when play between a dominant and submissive is just play. There is no relationship, there's no commitment. It is just dom and sub getting together for a play session. It is very important that aftercare be discussed and agreed to, just like what would happen with the giving consent to do what is going to be in that play. How much time, what type of activities. And something I have seen a few times, well, more than a few times, is when the play is just casual and the submissive gets the aftercare that was agreed to, but finds out that they need more, and the dominant they played with is, they're unwilling to do it because they've done what they've agreed to do. And I've seen some submissives, mostly from the newer submissives, who are saying that, that Dom X is a bad dominant because he only provided the aftercare during play that we agreed to, and I needed more and they wouldn't do it. That is a risk you take when you play and just have a pure play relationship or play session with somebody, that they do just what is agreed to. And sometimes that can be a sticky situation. So especially if you are a new submissive or newer and you are not that experienced with what you need in aftercare, you need to discuss that with just the play partner and agree how you're going to handle things should you need more aftercare than what you've agreed to. The thing to remember is that dominance, when a submissive lets you enjoy their body as an amusement park, if you will, the aftercare is what you are needing to do to kind of bring them back safely to reality and keep them safe. I have experienced being a bottom before. It's not my cup of tea. But I have not experienced the depths because of that a submissive feels with play. So it's very incumbent upon the dominant to be there to guide the submissive back and make them feel safe, make them feel cherished, and all those little things that aftercare entails. And aftercare, the planning for aftercare dominance needs to start really before play begins. Even before you start planning that next play date with your submissive, start planning the aftercare. Look at what has worked in the past for you, what they have expressed has worked in the past for them, and put together an aftercare plan that you can tweak with the play plan. But have that aftercare plan ready before you even start planning the play is my advice to dominance with aftercare. And submissives, aftercare is something that you can demand, and you can demand it your way, how you want it. And if a dominant, even just a play partner, is unwilling to meet what you need for aftercare, don't engage in play with them, because it is going to be an experience that is going to leave you feeling a whole host of emotions, and none of them are good. The last thing when it comes to play that I think needs to happen, especially when it's play in a relationship and it's a newer relationship, well, even if it's a long-term relationship, there needs to be, as unsexy as this sounds, a debriefing afterwards. Maybe, maybe it's a couple hours, maybe it's a couple of days, but there needs to be a discussion about what happened. What was good about it? What did you both enjoy about the play? Was there some things that were, well, we could improve on in the play? Was there something that happened during the play that maybe perhaps you thought you enjoyed, but it just didn't work for you this time? Or maybe it's just stopped being something that you really enjoy and really want? So you need to have that detailed discussion, almost like the a true and caring exit interview, when you're leaving a job. Almost, I hopefully no one's leaving a relationship after play, but having that detailed discussion of what was good, what was meh, and what was maybe not so good, and being frank and honest about it is something that needs to happen. And just a note, which I shouldn't have to say, but in today's world I feel I need to say, when you're discussing something that was meh, or maybe something that just you didn't care for, do it with kindness, because a lot of feelings can get hurt by how you describe something along those lines. So just please make sure when you're approaching something that might be potentially a touchy situation like that you do so gently and choose kind, uplifting words while you're expressing your desire to drop something or potentially tweak something going forward. The other thing that is a wonderful, fun part of the debriefing is when you can take the ideas or thoughts that maybe flash through your mind during play and create new fantasies together, or even new ideas of ways to do it next time. The sort of the developing and bringing to life fantasies. This is a great time to discuss, fantasies for the next time that there is play. So it's very important to have that debriefing conversation, even though it might seem unromantic or unsexy, but it is a conversation that is going to help partners have their playtime be more rewarding for both of them. And the more rewarding the play is, the more, in my opinion, the more the intimacy in the relationship is going to grow. So please don't forget about having the conversation once it's all said and done. And I hope that this little conversation about play will make your next play experience that much better, more enjoyable, and most of all, rewarding. However, just a final note of caution. Please, 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 no matter if you're dominant, submissive, switch, or even just somebody who's just, curious about the lifestyle or just enjoys being kinky from time to time, please remember that your safety is your responsibility. You need to trust completely who you play with when it comes to this lifestyle. And the saddest statistic that I know about this lifestyle is that the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom reports that 1 in 5 people involved in this lifestyle will have their consent violated within the first 5 years of joining the lifestyle. So if you are new to the lifestyle, especially if you're new, please take all the precautions in the world when it comes to play, because it's up to you to keep yourself safe. And it doesn't matter, like I said, your role. Submissives can be just as deviant as a deviant dominant can be when it comes to things that are not so good. And same with gender. Just because you're a male and you have an appendage between your legs, it doesn't mean that you are at any less risk than, say, a female. Although, yes, females are statistically at higher risk, but there's also the side of that men who have their consent violated are much less likely to come forward and discuss it. But that's a story for another day. The moral of all this is, when you play safe, and make sure you are playing with somebody that is trustworthy. So until next time, I look forward to chatting with you, and have a wonderful bit of your August, and I look forward to chatting with you in about a week's time.